Are we ready? Good afternoon and welcome to the San Francisco Board of Supervisors meeting of Tuesday, April 10th, 2018. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Thank you, Madam President. President Breed.
Here.
Breed present. Supervisor Cohen. Cohen present. Supervisor Fewer. Fewer not present. Supervisor Kim. Kim present. Supervisor Peskin. Peskin present. Supervisor Ronan. Ronan present. Supervisor Safai. Safai not present. Supervisor Sheehy. Sheehy not present. Supervisor Stephanie. Stephanie present. Supervisor Tang. Tang not present. Supervisor Yee. Yee present. Madam President, you have a quorum.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Madam Clerk, are there any communications?
I have none to report, Madam President.
Okay, colleagues, today we are approving the minutes from March 6th, 2018. Is there a motion? Moved by Supervisor Cohen, seconded by Supervisor Yee. Colleagues, can we take that without objection? Without objection, those meeting minutes will be approved after public comment. Madam Clerk, please read the next item.
The special order at 2 p.m. is the appearance by the Honorable Mayor Mark Farrell. There being no questions submitted from the supervisors of the even districts, the mayor may address the board for up to 5 minutes.
Okay, welcome, Mr. Mayor. You have the floor.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. I want to thank you once again for hosting question time. And as we gear up for budget season, I want to speak briefly about an issue that we all care deeply about, and that will be a focus of, I believe, all of our budget priorities, and we're all committed to addressing, and that's our homelessness crisis in San Francisco. Homelessness really is the challenge of our time, and while we all want to find the silver bullet to homelessness, we know it is a very deeply complicated issue. And we can't build ourselves out of homelessness. We have 7,500 supportive housing units in San Francisco, the most per capita of any major city in America. Yet, we haven't seen a decrease in our homeless population. And if we want to reduce our homelessness count by 1, we have to build 4 supportive housing units to make that happen, because of the new number of individuals who become homeless every year in our city. We have to tackle the issue from the onset before the problem becomes overwhelming. We need to invest in homelessness prevention and diversion programs, initiatives that we are calling problem-solving services. By funding programs such as eviction prevention, move-in assistance, flexible grants, conflict resolution, and homeward bound, we can make a huge difference in the lives of our at-risk residents. It's amazing how effective it can be when we help pay for rent, repay old loans, or help with car payments. Those small but really critical investments can literally be the difference between people staying in their home or living out on the street. And we know that when people become homeless and start living on our streets, it's a whole separate set of issues that we have to deal with as a city. Last week, I had the chance to meet Ethel Ennin, who is a single mother of 5 children at Compass Family Services. She works incredibly hard to take care of her kids, but she was recently struggling with her finances and fell behind on her rent. With the support from the city and nonprofit partners, we're able to help Ethel pay her back rent, provide her with a rental subsidy moving forward briefly, and now that her finances are in order, she's looking ahead to her future. And it's the power of these problem-solving services and something that I absolutely want to see continue and accelerate here in our city. Because it's not only inhumane and unethical for the city to allow people to fall into homelessness, it's also financially unsustainable. Problem-solving measures, which support initiatives that prevent people from becoming homeless in the first place, cost half the amount compared to services for people who are already living on our streets and need to be rehoused. And problem-solving services work. Last year, about 800 people took advantage of Homeward Bound, which reunites individual family members and loved ones. And of those individuals, only 6% returned to San Francisco to use our services of the city. I'm going to be supporting initiatives that are compassionate but are not enabling of street behavior. We have to take advantage of every program and to explore every resource available to make progress on this difficult challenge. We must continue to embrace collaboration with our partners at the state level. Tomorrow, I'm going to be going to Sacramento to join mayors from the 10 other largest cities in California to advocate for more than $1.5 billion in funding for homelessness initiatives at the state. As leaders of our city, we understand that homelessness is not an issue that stops at local jurisdictions. In towns and municipalities across the state, we're grappling with the challenges of homelessness. We have to band together as part of a unified front in California if we're going to change and solve this challenge of our lifetime. The state funds will complement our efforts at the local level and will help support long-term solutions to homelessness, such as permanent housing and rental assistance. And we have been fortunate. I want to make sure to recognize Assemblymember Phil Ting, Assemblymember David Chu, and Senator Scott Wiener, who have allocated millions for similar initiatives here in San Francisco. And just as I'm working closely with our state delegation on budget initiatives, I'm prepared and look forward to working with the members of this board on the major challenges facing our city during our budget process. As I said last month during question time, we must pursue our shared interests in a manner that is fiscally responsible and respects our budget process. This week, we are set to begin deliberation about a responsive budget that will take into account the needs of our entire city. These conversations will determine the best path forward for our city, as they always have and always will. Now, I don't believe is the time to pursue supplemental budget initiatives that run counter to the budgeting process. So I look forward to continuing to working with everybody here in this room to solve the real challenges of our time. Together, we will make a difference, and I look forward to doing so in a very collaborative manner. Thanks very much.
Thank you for being here today. With that, Madam Clerk, let's move on to our next agenda item. Please call the consent agenda.
Items 1 through 7 are on consent. These items are considered to be routine. If a member objects, an item may be removed and considered separately.
Seeing no names on the roster, Madam Clerk, on the items, please call the roll.
On items 1 through 7, Supervisor Cohen. Cohen, aye. Supervisor Fewer. Fewer, aye. Supervisor Kim. Kim, aye. Supervisor Peskin. Peskin, aye. Supervisor Ronan. Ronan, aye. Supervisor Safai. Safai, aye. Supervisor Sheehy. Sheehy, aye. Supervisor Stephanie. Stephanie, aye. Supervisor Tang.
Aye.
Tang, aye. Supervisor Yee. Yee, aye. Supervisor Breed.
Aye.
Breed, aye. There are 11 ayes.
Those items are adopted unanimously. Madam Clerk, please call the next item.
Item 8 is an ordinance to amend the Transportation Code, Article 1200, to prohibit non-standard vehicles from operating without a permit and to affirm the CEQA determination.
Colleagues, can we take that item, same house, same call? Without objection, the ordinance is finally passed unanimously. Please read items 9 and 11 together. 9 through 11.
Items 9 through 11 are 3 ordinances that pertain to the Conservatory of Music project located at 200 through 214 Van Ness Avenue. Item 9 is an amendment to the general plan to revise the height and bulk districts in the downtown area. Item 10 amends the planning code to authorize a height limit exception for additional building envelope to be used to enclose or screen specified features from view, allow increased roof height for performance and common space, and provide additional visual interest to the roof of the structure. And item 11 approves a development agreement between the city and the Conservatory of Music with various public benefits and for all 3 items to affirm the CEQA determination and to make the appropriate findings.
Colleagues, can we take these items, same house, same call? Without objection, the items are adopted unanimously. Madam Clerk, let's go to item number 12.
Item 12 is an ordinance to order the summary street vacation of a portion of Panama Street tangent to Niantic Street and Interstate Highway 280 in the Ocean View neighborhood to convey the city's interest in the street vacation area to the owner of 10 Niantic Street and to accept an offer for a public sidewalk for city maintenance and liability and to affirm the CEQA determination and to make the appropriate findings.
Supervisor Yee.
Thank you, President Bree. Colleagues, last week I requested that this item be continued for a week so that I could meet with the planning department and DBW to better understand how this property had gone from being approved as a single-family home to having 2 unauthorized units and then having all of the tenants on the site be evicted. After speaking with representatives from the planning and DBW, including Director Nuru, I am satisfied that there will be more reliable oversight on this property, and I will be kept abreast of the results of the inspection that is to be done before a certificate of occupancy is issued for the rehab property. I am now comfortable that the regrettable situation that resulted in multiple displacements will not occur again, and so we'll be supporting this legislation today.
Thank you, Supervisor Yee. Colleagues, can we take this item, same house, same call? Without objection, the ordinance is adopted unanimously on the first reading. All right, Madam Clerk, let's go to item number 13.
Item 13 is an ordinance to amend the administrative code to modify the process for the mayor to appear at the Board of Supervisors for a question and answer session.
Roll call vote.
On item 13, Supervisor Cohen. Cohen, aye. Supervisor Fewer. Fewer, aye. Supervisor Kim. Kim, aye. Supervisor Peskin.
Aye.
Peskin, aye. Supervisor Ronan. Ronan, aye. Supervisor Safai.
Aye.
Safai, aye. Supervisor Sheehy. Sheehy, aye. Supervisor Stephanie.
No.
Stephanie, no. Supervisor Tang.
No.
Tang, no. Supervisor Yee.
Aye.
Yee, aye. Supervisor Breed.
No.
Breed, no. There are 8 ayes and 3 noes, with Supervisors Stephanie, Tang, and Breed in the dissent.
The ordinance is finally passed. Madam Clerk, please read items 14 through 33 together.
Items 14 through 33 are 20 ordinances that adopt and implement various amendments to the following unions and to implement Union Access to New Employees program. For item 14, it's amendment number 1 to the 2014 through 19 MOU between the city and the Service Employees International Union Local 1021. Item 15, amendment number 1 to the 2014 through 19 MOU between the city and the San Francisco District Attorneys Investigators Association. Item 16, amendment number 1 to the 2016 through 19 MOU between the city and the Service Employees International Union Local 1021 staff and per diem nurses. Item 17, amendment number 1 to the 2014 through 2019 MOU between the city and the Teamsters Local 856 multi-unit. Item 18, amendment number 1 to the 2014 through 19 MOU between the city and the Transport Workers Union, AFL-CIO, Local 200. Item 19, amendment number 1 to the 2017 through 2021 MOU between the city and the Committee of Interns and Residents Service Employees International Union. For item 20, amendment number 1 to the 2015 through 2018 MOU between the city and the Union of American Physicians and Dentists, Unit 18. Item 21, amendment number 1 to the 2015 through 2018 MOU between the city and the Union of American Physicians and Dentists, Unit 17. Item 22, amendment number 1 to the 2014 through 2019 MOU between the city and the San Francisco City Workers United, the Painters. For item 23, amendment number 1 to the 2014 through 2019 MOU between the city and the International Union of Operating Engineers, Stationary Engineers Local 39. For item 24, amendment number 1 to the 2014 through 2019 MOU between the city and the Municipal Executives Association. For item 25, amendment number 1 to the 2014 through 2019 MOU between the city and the Operating Engineers Local Union 3 of the International Union of Operating Engineers, AFL-CIO. For item 26, amendment number 2 to the 2014 through 2019 MOU between the city and the Machinists Union, Local 1414, the International Association of Machinists and Aerospace Workers Machinists, Automotive Trades District, Lodge 190. For item 27, the amendment number 2 to the 2014 through 2019 MOU between the city and the Municipal Attorneys Association. For item 28, amendment number 1 to the 2014 through 2019 MOU between the city and the Laborers International Union, Local 261. For item 29, amendment number 1 to the 2014 through 2019 MOU between the city and the United Association of Journeymen and Apprentices of the Plumbing and Pipe Fitting Industry, Local number 38. For item 30, amendment number 2 to the 2014 through 19 MOU between the city and the International Federation of Professional and Technical Engineers, Local 21, AFL-CIO. For item 31, amendment number 1 to the 2016 through 2019 MOU between the city and the Teamsters Local 856, the Supervising Registered Nurses. For item 32, amendment number 1 to the 2014 through 2019 MOU between the city and the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers. And item 33, amendment number 1 to the 2014 through 2019 MOU between the city and the San Francisco Building Inspectors Association.
Roll call vote.
On items 14 through 33, Supervisor Cohen.
Aye.
Cohen, aye. Supervisor Fewer. Fewer, aye. Supervisor Kim. Kim, aye. Supervisor Peskin.
Aye.
Peskin, aye. Supervisor Ronan. Ronan, aye. Supervisor Safai. Safai, aye. Supervisor Sheehy. Sheehy, aye. Supervisor Stephanie. Stephanie, aye. Supervisor Tang.
Aye.
Tang, aye. Supervisor Yee.
Aye.
Yee, aye. Supervisor Breed.
Aye.
Breed, aye. There are 11 ayes.
Those items are adopted unanimously. Madam Clerk, please call items 34 through 36 together.
Items 34 through 36 are 3 resolutions that receive and approve the annual reports for 2016 through 17. For item 34, for the Yerba Buena Community Benefit District. For item 35, the Greater Union Square Business Improvement District. And for item 36, the annual report for the Castro Upper Market Community Benefit District, all submitted as required by the Property and Business Improvement District Law of 1994.
Colleagues, can we take those items, same house, same call? Without objection, those items are adopted unanimously. Madam Clerk, please call items 37 and 38 together.
Items 37 and 38 are 2 ordinances that accept the irrevocable offer of public infrastructure acquisition facilities. For item 37, for real property associated with 7th Street and Mission Bay Drive, Phase 1 and Phase 2, infrastructure improvements to declare city property and additional property as open public right-of-way. And for item 38, to accept the public infrastructure acquisition facilities associated with the Mission Bay South, Mariposa Street intersection infrastructure improvements adjacent to Highway Interstate 280, and to establish official public right-of-way widths and street grades, and to amend the ordinance 1061 entitled Regulating the Width of Sidewalks to establish the official sidewalk width on the above-mentioned street, otherwise known as the Mission Bay South, and to accept the Mariposa Street intersection public infrastructure for city maintenance and liability purposes, subject to specified limitations, and to adopt the CEQA determination and to make the appropriate findings.
Colleagues, can we take these items, same house, same call? Without objection, the items are adopted unanimously. Let's go to item number 39.
Item 39 is an ordinance to amend the Business and Tax Regulations Code to suspend temporarily the application of the business registration and fee requirements for transportation network company drivers and taxi drivers.
Same house, same call. Without objection, the ordinance passes unanimously on the first reading. Item number 40.
Item 40 is a resolution to accept a public sidewalk easement on Shipley Street, adjacent to the development project at 923 Folsom Street, adopt the Public Works order concerning the easement, and to make the appropriate findings.
Colleagues, can we take this item, same house, same call? Without objection, the resolution is adopted unanimously. All right, let's go to committee reports.
Item 45 was considered by the Budget and Finance Subcommittee at a regular meeting on Thursday, April 5th, and was forwarded as a committee report. It's a resolution to adopt a fixed 2-year budgetary cycle for the following various city departments: the Airport, Child Support Services, the Port, the Public Utilities Commission, and defining the terms and setting the deadlines.
Colleagues, can we take this item, same house, same call? Without objection, the resolution is adopted unanimously. And we will now go to roll call for introductions. However, we do have 3 commendations at 2:30, so I will interrupt roll call in order to move into the commendation. So, Madam Clerk, I will turn it over to you at this time.
Thank you, Madam President. Supervisor Cohen.
Thank you. Thank you. Good morning, or good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I have nothing to introduce. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor.
Sorry.
Supervisor Fewer.
Thank you very much, Madam Clerk. Colleagues, it is my pleasure to introduce a resolution today in support of the California Schools and Local Communities Funding Act. This statewide ballot initiative would implement a split roll reform of Proposition 13 and finally make corporations and large commercial property owners pay their fair share of property taxes. When Prop 13 was on the ballot in 1978, it was sold as a way to protect homeowners from rising property taxes, but it's actually corporations and large commercial property owners who benefit the most. Chevron is pocketing hundreds of millions every year from this corporate loophole. Disneyland is paying just 5 cents per square foot in property taxes, 8 times less than the average California homeowner pays. This inequity has been made even worse after the latest tax giveaway to corporations by number 45 and Republicans in Congress. A few years ago, when I was on the school board, both the school board and the Board of Supervisors unanimously passed a resolution in support of a split roll reform of Prop 13. In the last month and a half, there have been over 300,000 signatures gathered for the California Schools and Local Communities Funding Act and is expected to be on the 2020 ballot. This act would restore over $11 billion in annual revenue for our schools and local communities across California just by making commercial property owners pay their fair share of property taxes. For San Francisco, this would mean over $800 million per year. This is a common sense reform and the fairest possible way for us to generate the revenue we need to fully fund our schools and public services. California schools have gone from the top 10 to the bottom 10 in the country in per pupil funding, education funding, and we must reverse this trend. San Francisco should be at the forefront of this movement to close the commercial property tax loophole in Prop 13 and make corporations pay their fair share of property taxes. I hope you all will join me in supporting this resolution. Thank you very much. The rest I submit.
Thank you, Supervisor Fewer. Supervisor Kim. Thank you. Supervisor Peskin.
Thank you, Madam Clerk, colleagues. Today, after a number of years of negotiations with some South of Market developers, the San Francisco Flower Mart Tenants Association, and the city, I'm introducing, together with Supervisor Kim, a resolution outlining the city's general desire to swap 2 parcels of land, one in the South of Market and one the former Hearst Printing Press on Marin Street, in order to secure an appropriate temporary relocation site for the beloved San Francisco Flower Mart. In order to demonstrate the city's continued commitment to a mutually beneficial arrangement for all of the parties involved, the resolution puts a clear stake in the ground that we want to move the relocation process along in parallel with the Central SOMA planning effort that is underway. The resolution demonstrates the acknowledgement of our Public Utilities Commission on behalf of the city that conveying and exchanging 639 Bryant Street for 2000 Marin Street will give the PUC more room for equipment storage and provide a stable and accessible temporary home for more than 50 Flower Mart vendors that employs hundreds of workers, farmers, floral artists, and is a beloved treasure in San Francisco. I also want to thank and acknowledge Mayor Farrell and his staff who are helping guide this process through the coming couple of months. In addition, I am introducing the Equity for Impacts Transportation Tax that I mentioned at the Transportation Authority Commission meeting earlier today that would utilize our existing gross receipts tax rate for a new category of business, private transportation companies. As with stationless bike share and other emerging industries like the e-scooters that everybody is complaining to us about, I believe that it's good public policy and practice to ensure that our local laws keep pace with our growing technology landscape. We have to move just as quickly as tech and make sure that there are clear and equitable rules that apply to this business sector. As such, this tax is a long overdue update to our gross receipts tax structure, which recognizes the emerging and evolving businesses of private transportation, whether it's fixed route businesses like Chariot or multi-billion-dollar commercial carrier businesses like Uber and Lyft. While Capitol Hill shells out federal tax cuts for corporations and permanent funding streams for public projects are starting to dry up, local jurisdictions, as we all know too well, struggle to fund basic services and build out the necessary infrastructure to keep pace with growth here in the city. And of course, we are all aware of the widening income gap, and that further highlights the need to identify new revenue to mitigate the impacts of population growth and demands on our public infrastructure. This tax, according to the controller, will generate up to $35 million annually to fund vital city services and much-needed capital improvements. The city has been, I think, as we all know, very generous and welcome private transportation companies to our streets with open arms in the effort to attract jobs. And while we've been very successful at that, our tax laws have not kept pace and have not captured the value of the investments we've made in attracting these businesses. Fundamentally, this is about equity. Everybody has to pay their fair share and play by the same rules, including billionaire corporations that have been flying under the tax radar. In recognition of this fact, the tax would also repeal what's left of the mid-market payroll tax exclusion, which has, at least in my mind, overstayed its welcome. It's time to right the scales and return some value to the hardworking people of the city and county of San Francisco. This new gross receipts tax would impose at its highest tier slightly less than 1% on private transportation companies, 0.975 of 1%, which is the same as the existing tier of tax rates utilized by the rest of large businesses here in San Francisco. This is a corporate business tax, not a tax or fee on drivers or passengers, and I ask for your support to put it before the voters on the November ballot. And because this is not a regulatory scheme, we are still resolute, or at least I'm resolute, in my desire to see the state finally and appropriately regulate transportation network companies and private transportation services, not just for environmental and gridlock concerns, but to ensure the safety of consumers and the general public. Finally, as we've all been watching on TV this morning in bits and pieces when we're between meetings, the United States Judiciary Committee has been questioning the founder and CEO of Facebook, Mark Zuckerberg, since earlier this morning about the Cambridge Analytica scandal that resulted in the abuse and misuse of personal private information of some 87 million Facebook users. That data, as we are learning in more detail in real time, was exploited and weaponized to manipulate the emotions of its users and to fundamentally undermine our democracy. In his opening comments at today's hearing, Mr. Zuckerberg referred to Facebook as an idealistic and optimistic company and platform. But that is a far cry from its original motto, which was, if you recall, move fast and break things. Internal memos from 2016 discussed at the proceedings today reveal admissions from Facebook Vice President Andrew Bosworth that Facebook's growth in connecting people warranted potential harm. So we connect people. That can be bad if they make it negative. Maybe it costs a life by exposing someone to bullies. Maybe someone dies in a terrorist attack coordinated by our tools, Bosworth wrote. In the Bay Area, the capital of tech innovation, we are inundated with emerging technology and business models predicated on the collection and sale of our private data. This emerging technology clogs our streets, our sidewalks, our screens, and our attention spans. And I think that for most residents of this city, who not only use but are confronted by the use of emerging technology, the lived experience is that these companies are moving fast and breaking things. The city must do a better job of protecting its residents against fundamentally disruptive technologies that collect private data and traffic in that private data for profit. It is our job and our obligation as regulators and representatives to put a firewall around private entities that pose not only obvious dangers, but also, as in the case of Cambridge Analytica and other notable abuses of private personal data, the insidious and subversive monetization of our private information. As our federal government races to understand the extent to which private and personal data was misused by the willful neglect of private companies who collected and stored that information, I am today requesting that our city attorney begin drafting a measure for this November's ballot that would prohibit the city and county of San Francisco from contracting or doing business with any private entity that fails to adhere to the highest standards for data protection, that traffics in or monetizes in any way the private personal information of its users or consumers, or that collects, copies, or stores the private personal information of its users for any purpose other than is absolutely necessary for the provision of its services. We cannot sit idly by while private companies pursue an unrestrained profit motive with ruthless and reckless intent. And whether it is e-scooters or jump bikes, anything that requires a permit from the city and county of San Francisco, that has a lease on city property, that has a contract with the city, should be subject to these provisions. The rest I will submit.
Thank you, Supervisor. Madam President, I will refer the floor back to you, and we'll return to introduction of new business at the appropriate time.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. And so we have 3 commendations, as I've stated previously, and we will begin with Supervisor Stephanie.
Thank you, Madam President. Colleagues, last Tuesday, I introduced a resolution to recognize our San Francisco Giants on their opening day at AT&T Park. And we continue today to celebrate the Giants' 60th season in San Francisco, and I'm glad you're all here up at the podium. Since calling San Francisco home 60 years ago, the Giants have had 12 playoff appearances, 6 pennant wins, and 3 World Series wins. We've had the pleasure of watching skilled managers like the first African-American manager in Major League Baseball, Frank Robinson, Dusty Baker, the 3-time World Series champion and future Hall of Famer Bruce Bochy. They have led amazing players like Willie Mays, Willie McCovey, Will Clark, Barry Bonds, and Buster Posey. And there's many more. Can't name them all. So many San Franciscans feel close to our announcers and broadcasters since listening to their commentary on TV or radio for decades. We are so fortunate to be joined today by one of my personal favorites, Mike Krukow. Thank you for being here. While we commend our home team's efforts on the field, I would also like to acknowledge the incredible contributions the team and organization has made in our communities. The Giants organization has been a significant leader in protecting our environment. They have been recipients of numerous recycling and sustainability awards and certifications, including California's highest environmental honor, the Governor's Environmental and Economic Leadership Award. This season also serves as the 25th anniversary of the Giants' partnership with Until There's a Cure, working side by side to raise awareness of prevention, education, care, and services in an effort to ending AIDS. The organization has also been the leader in professional sports supporting equity and equality for our LGBTQ community, including being the first professional sports team to participate in the It Gets Better campaign. The team also filed an amicus brief to the U.S. Supreme Court in support of marriage equality in 2015. The Giants Community Fund also supports Junior Giants Baseball, which currently serves 25,000 participants annually to develop character, confidence, integrity, leadership, and teamwork in girls and boys in over 90 leagues. The Giants have also participated in National Gun Violence Awareness Day on June 2nd through their support on social media. The color of the National Gun Violence Awareness Day is orange, so it's so nice to have the Giants participate in your orange and black colors. And I personally want to thank Joey Nevin for helping to make that happen. In 2016, ESPN named the Giants the Sports Humanitarian Team of the Year. I want to thank the Giants organization on behalf of the Board of Supervisors for their incredible contributions to our city over the past 60 years. We look forward to so many more celebrations in the years to come, and especially this year, given it is an even year. We are proud at this time to offer you to comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie. I like your glasses, by the way. Gamer. I love coming to this building. It has a lot of unbelievable memories for all of us in the Giants organization, standing there in front of City Hall during the parades, in this room especially, because here you can feel the history and the strength of the city of San Francisco, and it's powerful. We are an organization that's been around 136 years, 60 of which have been here in this city. And it has been a great relationship, and the support that we receive from the city is always something that amazes me. And I stand here today representing all the people that have worked in our organization, the folks in the front office that have directed and led our organization, and all of the players that have worn the uniform that says San Francisco across their chest. It is a great honor for all of us to represent this city. We feel the weight and the responsibility of this city when we stand on those baselines that are introduced every year to start a new season. And it allows us to say, and say it loudly, to anybody who will listen, we are the Giants, and we are San Francisco, and we will always be San Francisco. And to the Board of Supervisors and to the Mayor of San Francisco, we say thank you for your recognition. Thank you.
Thank you all for being here, and congratulations again, and special shout out to Jack Bear for your work with our styrofoam ban and working with the ballpark to address those particular issues. And it is no surprise that you all have been chosen as an environmental leader in a number of things that you've done at the stadium as well. So I just want to say thank you for working with my office and the city on that particular issue. Congratulations again, and thank you for your service. Okay, with that, we have the next commendation for the day will be given by Supervisor Fewer.
Thank you very much, President Breed. It is my pleasure today to commend Karen Shane. And Karen, can you come on up? Who I've had the pleasure of working closely with as a member of the Reentry Council. Karen has a long history of working on criminal justice issues, beginning in 1976 when she began visiting women prisoners in 1976 as a participant in a women prisoner project at the University of California at Santa Cruz. Karen has worked at Legal Services for Prisoners with Children for 8 years, leading the organization's legislative agenda and supervising a statewide collaborative effort to provide counsel to incarcerated survivors of intimate partner battery. She then went on to the Women's Foundation of California, where she developed and led the foundation's criminal justice and county policy work to change California's over-reliance on incarceration. Beginning in 2014, Karen joined the Reentry Division of the San Francisco Adult Probation Department and as Reentry Policy Planner, where she was responsible for coordinating the Reentry Council and the Community Corrections Partnership. In her role at the Reentry Council, Karen consistently worked to improve outcomes for justice-involved people in San Francisco and beyond. Beyond the regular meetings she convened, Karen helped to implement San Francisco's Justice Reinvestment Initiative, resulting in documentation of racial disproportionality in the criminal justice system and a call to action. She helped advance interagency analysis about racial disproportionality between adult probation, the Office of the Public Defender, the District Attorney's Office, and the Sheriff's Department. And she helped to achieve the goals of the Reentry Council Policy Subcommittee through active support of criminal justice reform bills, including bail reform, civil assessments mitigation, expanded protections through ban-the-box, expungement relief, and strengthening pretrial services. During her time with the city and county, Karen received the Hero Award from the San Francisco Human Rights Commission and the In the Trenches Award from the Senior Ex-Offenders Project. I have been consistently impressed by Karen's dedication, passion, professionalism, and skill, and her transition will certainly be a loss to the Reentry Council and to our collective work to change the criminal justice system and existing racial disparities. That said, the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights is definitely gaining an asset. Karen, on behalf of the entire Board of Supervisors, I want to thank you for your strong moral compass to always do the right thing for those who are most in need. Your commitment to human and civil rights, your warm, welcoming, and friendly smile, and equally as warm personality, and your generous personality that continues to give and make us a more just society. I will miss working with you, and I hope to work with you on future projects as I know you will continue doing your good works. Thank you so much, Karen.
So thank you so much to you, Supervisor Fewer, and to the entire board, including President Breed. I have really learned so much while I've been working for the city of San Francisco, and I know how difficult it is. I've really learned how difficult it is to make change in city government. I've met so many people since I've been here in all of the city departments who are truly committed to making this city a great place to live and work for everyone. It's been a tremendous challenge, and I've watched real change makers work hard to make change work for everyone. But this is an uphill battle. As we watch out-migration of African Americans continue in unprecedented numbers, as we see fewer and fewer children attending public schools in the city, as we watch the number of our homeless neighbors increasing, as we see the number of people with serious mental health issues unable to find the help they need, we are in danger of losing the battle for this city. So, while I'm deeply thankful for the commendation and feel so much respect for all of you and the people you represent, I'm also very troubled. I started working here because I wanted to see what it was like to work from the inside, to work on needed changes from a different perspective. And I'm proud of the work that we've done together, particularly in deepening the discussion about racial disproportionality in our criminal justice system. But we need to move from understanding the problem to actually making solutions and implementing it. So the last time I was in this room to receive an award, it was from the Human Rights Commission. It was the Human Rights Commission's Hero Award. I was excited to have received the award, but it suddenly became an extremely humbling experience. Many of my co-awardees were family members of people who had been killed by San Francisco police officers. Those honorees refused their awards, saying that they didn't want an award, they wanted justice. San Francisco has yet to provide that justice. With conversations about providing tasers to police officers and broadening the armed scope of our adult probation department, we are not moving toward real solutions, but instead opting for the appearance of safety while putting our most vulnerable residents in harm's way. I love this city. I moved here in 1972 seeking and finding greater diversity and inclusion, but we seem to have lost our way. I look to all of you to help us get on a path that honors all of us. So thank you. I really am honored, and I have to be who I am. So thanks again.
For being very famous. Thank you for being who you are. Thank you.
Thank you for your words and your service, Ms. Shane. Thank you very much. Okay, and we will have our last commendation for the day will be given by Supervisor Peskin.
Thank you, Madam President. Last but not least, on the occasion of his last day of being in his 80s, tomorrow is his 90th birthday, my friend Ernie Bile, who is been a part of the North Beach and San Francisco scene for many, many decades, beloved by one and all in the neighborhood. His story is inextricably linked with the city and county of San Francisco through journalism, through the jazz scene, where he partied with the likes of Duke Ellington and Thelonious Monk. And every aspect of Ernie is North Beach, from his love of food and culture and understanding the intertwined communities of Chinatown and North Beach, and expressing it so elegantly in 3 books, one of which will be launched tomorrow evening at Original Joe's on the occasion of Ernie's 90th birthday. His first book, which you could buy at the butcher on the corner, Little City Meats, I think is where I first bought that book, which he did a number of years ago, Sketches from a North Beach Journal, which features a series of profiles of the larger-than-life characters dating back from the California Gold Rush all the way to the present day. And the second book, which I had the pleasure, I think, of writing a little forward to, San Francisco Appetites and Afterthoughts in Search of the Good Life by the Golden Gate, chronicles his appetites from music, restaurants, bars, cooking, cookbooks, arts, old buildings, and the bohemian lifestyle of the city. And then, as I said, tomorrow, Stops Along the Royal Road by Grizzly Peak Press, adventures from a lifetime of travel, paying tributes to his family who is here. I got to read that copy when I was on vacation last year, and even showed Ernie where a couple of typos were. Just teasing. And it pays tributes to writers who've inspired him to hop around the globe, recounting improbable and really incredible tales as he traveled through Asia, Australia, South America, Europe, and of course the United States. Congratulations, Ernie, for all of your work and for making the North Beach scene what it is. Congratulations, Ernie.
Thank you very much.
I missed one thing, which is, and this is to Supervisor Stephanie, we share something, which is all three of us have a column in the Marina Times every month.
Yes, I guess that's true. Thank you, Supervisor Peskin. I really appreciate your good thoughts, your good words. And thank you to all of the supervisors. I do appreciate this very, very much. Becoming 90 has kind of sneaked up on me. One day I was 65, the next day I was 90 years old. It just seemed like it happened overnight. My wife likes to say, the older you get, the better you get. And then she adds, unless you are a banana. And I guess I am a banana. So I want to thank all of you for your attention here today and for your good wishes. And I hope that we can repeat this for many years to come. Thank you very much. Reason. Eric, thank you so much.
Right here. 1, 2.
Thank you.
Congratulations, Ernie, and thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you very much.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, that concludes our commendations for today. We will return to our regular agenda. We left off with our roll call for introductions. Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Madam President. Supervisor Ronan. Okay, thank you. Supervisor Safai.
I don't have anything really to submit. I just want to be added as a co-sponsor to the land swap that Supervisor Peskin introduced today.
Thank you.
With the flower mart. Thank you.
We'll see it done. Supervisor Sheehy.
Submit.
Thank you. Supervisor Stephanie. Okay, thank you. Supervisor Tang.
Submit.
Thank you. Supervisor Yee.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Colleagues, today I am introducing a resolution in anticipation for the Asian Pacific American Heritage Month in May. Given the anti-immigrant and racist rhetoric and policies emanating from Washington, D.C., which has led to increased acts of intolerance and violence against immigrant communities, there has been an increased effort from communities, both locally and nationally, to remove names from public statues and places which honor figures who espouse racism. There has also been an increased movement, both nationally and globally, to recognize women's historical contributions and their role in our current professional and public settings. We have been successful at the local level in doing many of these things. For example, Supervisor Cohen's legislation to rename Columbus Day to Indigenous Peoples Day, Supervisor Peskin's legislation to remove Jessen Herman's name from the plaza. Students from the University of San Francisco renamed the campus building from Phelan Hall to Toller Hall after Bert Toller, an African-American alumnus. Not only has our country's consciousness been raised to acknowledge the important contributions from historically marginalized communities, people of color, particularly women of color, and also the disabled community. We must know our history in order to not repeat the mistakes of our past. This is why I am introducing a resolution to name Phelan Avenue to Frida Kahlo Way and remove the Phelan's name's racist legacy. James D. Phelan served as San Francisco mayor from 1897 to 1902 and was a senator from 1915 to 1921. He supported the Chinese Exclusion Act of 1882 and Immigrant Act of 1924, which basically banned the Chinese and Japanese immigration from being entered the United States. He ran his senatorial campaign on the Keep California White and Save Our State from Oriental Aggression. He also supported legislation to make interracial marriage between Asians and Caucasians illegal. Though the street name is named after his father, Phelan, the mayor's anti-immigration policies besmirched his father's name. San Francisco is a city which prides itself on values of inclusion, tolerance, and respect for multicultural diversity. We will not tolerate exclusion, racism, and hatred in our communities. Let's reflect our city's values today to make the future of San Francisco a better place to live. I look forward to your support. The rest I submit.
Thank you, Supervisor Yee. President Breed.
Thank you. Colleagues, today I'm introducing legislation that supports Senate Bill 1045, authored by Senators Scott Wiener and Henry Stern. It creates a new state conservatorship program that focuses on providing supportive housing and intensive wraparound services to care for the most vulnerable residents in our state and our city. Those who are chronically homeless, suffering from severe mental illness, and struggling with substance addiction. Conservatorship is when a court appoints a guardian or a responsible person to care for an individual who is gravely disabled and cannot care for themselves. The state currently has two conservatorship programs. One that is designed for individuals who are unable to care for themselves due to mental illness, and one for individuals who are unable to care for themselves due to physical health issues, cognitive impairment, or elder abuse. Unfortunately, these existing programs don't provide San Francisco the flexibility or the tools we need to help some of the most difficult to serve individuals who are dying on our streets. And sadly, the conditions are worsening every single day. According to our last homeless count and survey, 31% of our homeless population is chronically homeless, and this population is struggling with severe health conditions. 65% of chronically homeless individuals report struggling with drug and alcohol addiction. 63% reported suffering from a psychiatric or emotional condition. And 45% reported suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder. The most at-risk subset of this population, approximately 338 individuals, are accessing the most emergency services. This is the group SB 1045 is designed to help. You can't walk anywhere within a half-mile radius of even City Hall without seeing someone who is clearly in distress or suffering from serious addiction challenges. If I were on the streets without shelter and in a mental state that inhibited me from taking care of myself, I would want someone to intervene. I would want medical attention, housing, and stability. But just because these individuals are difficult to serve doesn't mean we simply give up. It is not humane to allow those who are chronically homeless and severely mentally ill or grappling with addiction to wither away on our streets. We know the status quo is not working, and attempting to serve the needs of the portion of our chronically homeless population who suffer from the most severe mental illness and addiction through emergency room visits, interactions with law enforcement, temporary social services, and incarceration is costing the city hundreds of millions of dollars every year with no means of ending this cycle. The combined cost of these repeated services are significantly higher than providing stable housing and supportive services. And we've proven that with the opening of the Richardson Apartments located in my district, 120 individuals who receive complete wraparound services and a safe, affordable place to call home. We must do the hard work and the creative thinking it takes to get the most at-risk individuals off our streets, to get them housed, healthy, and stabilized for the long term. I'm tired of hearing we can't do anything about it or our hands are tied, because if there's a will, there's a way. And SB 1045 is one way to help us deal with the mental health, homelessness, and substance abuse crises in San Francisco. As it stands today, we have no way to conserve the most at-risk individuals struggling with chronic homelessness, severe mental illness, and substance abuse challenges. In a supportive housing environment with wraparound services, as I said, the Richardson Apartments is a perfect example of how it could work. And this bill also provides us with another tool in order to address those issues. SB 1045 creates a new type of conservatorship that is focused on providing housing with supportive services. Under the bill, the Department of Public Health, Human Service Agency, the Sheriff's Department, and General Hospital can recommend that a person is conserved who is chronically homeless and suffering from serious mental illness or substance abuse disorder, which results in frequent visits to the emergency room, detentions by the police under a 5150 hold, or frequent psychiatric evaluations. If approved by a judge, the individual would then be compelled to stay in supportive housing and receive wraparound services for up to 1 year, with the opportunity to petition every month for review. This bill will give San Francisco more tools to actually make a difference for those we see who are suffering on our streets every day with the most acute mental health and substance abuse issues. SB 1045 is currently moving through the Senate committee process, and if passed, I'm committed to introducing the local legislation to enact this bill. The rest I submit.
Thank you, Madam President. Seeing no other names on the roster, that concludes the introduction of new business.
Okay, Madam Clerk, let's go to public comment.
At this time, it is the public's opportunity to address the entire Board of Supervisors for up to 2 minutes on items within the subject matter jurisdiction of the Board, to include the March 6, 2018 Board meeting minutes and items 49 through 58 on the adoption without reference to committee calendar. Public comment is not allowed when an item has been previously subject to public comment at a board committee. Pursuant to the board's rules of order, please direct your remarks to the board as a whole and not to individual members of the board and not to the audience. Speakers using interpretation assistance will be allowed twice the amount of time to testify. And if you would like to display a document on that overhead projector, please clearly state such to SFG TV and then remove the document when you'd like the screen to return to live coverage of the meeting.
First speaker, please.
Madam Clerk, before I talk, I would like to give 11 copy of my request to every one of our supervisors.
Thank you, Mr. Mgehe. Brent will come by to pick that up from you.
أيها الإخوة العرب الموجودين معنا هنا في مدينة سان فرانسيسكو، اسمي عبد الله مجاهد وأنا أمريكي من أصل عربي مصري. أنا هنا اليوم لي الحق إني أتكلم باسمكم وأطالب جين كيم our supervisor المسؤولة عن مربع نمرة 6 اللي أنا منه، إنها بتبقى تفكر في تنظيف شوارع مدينة سان فرانسيسكو. وأنا النهاردة جاي بفكرة أتمنى إنكم تقروا عنها في الورق اللي أنا اديته لكم دلوقتي وتساعدونا. يعني باختصار كل واحد من اور سوبرفايزر إذا قدر يجيب لنا 25 أو 50 متطوع من منطقته ينظفوا الشوارع مع مسز جين كيم، هيبقى عندنا في الشوارع نظيفة ومفيش حقن تضرب الأطفال اللي في الشارع. من جهة تانية هنخلي التورست يجوا لهنا لسان فرانسيسكو، وفي السعادة هيدخل لنا مبلغ تاني ونوفر 30 مليون بنصرفهم على تنظيف الشارع. Ladies and gentlemen, my name Abdullah Mujahid. I coming today with good idea to give our courage lady. Her name is Kim Jim. I am one of her residents in District 6. I know her feeling about my city, and I want to ask each one of our supervisors, if you bring it between 25 or 51 as volunteer to help the hair and to clean the street from the garbage and from the drug thing from the street, as we see in channel NBC with hair, we're going to save 30 million every year. We're going to let the tourists coming to our city, and we're going to have business in hotel, in restaurant, in any place. Jean Kim, looking to me, I support President Barack Obama, and I coming today to support you for cleaning the street of San Francisco. You can't make that by yourself, but each one of our supervisors going to bring it for you and for our city between 25 or 51 to clean the city. I like you, I like your courage, and I am going to tell you, you write it my name as #1 volunteer to clean the city with you. You can't make it by yourself, but we always around you. You know why? Because you are nice and we love you. You don't love me, I don't care. I love you if you like it or not, and write it.
Thank you for your comments. Next speaker, please.
Good afternoon, Andrew Yip. Political leaders who always take good care of the people should accomplish the goals and objectives of maintaining the livelihood of the people, of protecting the civil justice for the freedom of a democratic system, and of defending the common good of national unity. To govern by virtues, a man must begin with self-cultivation and to keep his family in good order, rule the country in success, and making peace and wellness for the world. Those who occupy high positions must serve others with virtues. Besides their own self-cultivation, they must treat others with love and kindness. If a leader can show one's virtue and be kind to others, one shall be loved and being supported by the people. World leaders should set a good example for leading on the people to behave accordingly with outright morality. One is to deliver teachings of true principles on daily matters of social issues, to educate our people for the better improvements of personal virtues as a good citizen. The so-called cultivation of virtue is the source of the rise and fall of a country. being patriotic to the nation, loving one's parents, maintaining one's personal dignity, having good trust, being kind, righteous, and courteous are the good virtues that a wise person must establish as one's character for the true perfection and true happiness of one's life. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Next speaker, please.
Good evening, Supervisors. The month of the ballot or the bullet is fast approaching. The ballot or the bullet will explain itself. In a few months, there will be thousands of students graduating. As you come across that stage, you will have a diploma in one hand and a voting card in the other. Soon you will make a difference. Voting is for the people, by the people. Thousands of college students in San Francisco must vote. You have the power, you must have the attitude. It's not the altitude, but the attitude will determine how high you will go. You are not out of bounds. You are the new millennium voters. You will not vote the same way your parents did in the past. Hands that's picking up pencils now can pick up an acting female mayor for San Francisco with the good of San Francisco at heart. Candidates may or may not have been born in the slums, but the slums is not born in you. You can rise above circumstances. Many San Franciscans are suffering. Thousands of youths marched against deportation and gun violence. Let's vote for the right female for acting mayor. You cannot sing up on change.
Sir.
You
Sir.
must keep up on change.
Sir, I am pausing your time, just very quickly pausing your time. If you could refrain from talking about campaigning in the chamber for any particular candidate, that would be much appreciated.
That's fine.
I will now start your clock you have 33 seconds remaining.
It's done. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Next speaker, please.
Good evening. My name is Sam. I opened a restaurant in San Francisco 42 years already. In San Francisco corner of Broadway, Stockton and Broadway, okay? But we have very problem right now because of the project on the Broadway, they're remodeling Broadway, okay? They take the 4-time delay. We had to shut off the restaurant 4 times already. Every time a half day for the repair the water, something like that, okay? Okay. First time they needed 2 months only. First they say April to finish, and next they say July, and then December, and then now they say this year the April finished, the April process already. They say maybe May, okay? Maybe May. They make my business, all the business go down to 40% already. Seven shop in 2 blocks, 7 shop closed down already, okay? Nobody walk the Broadway. Nobody come into Chinatown, okay? We don't know what can we do. But now I shut off my restaurant 2 weeks. You know why? Because we don't have the money to pay for the payroll on next 14 days. We have to start first, okay? Because I know this month will be slow, okay? Start first. I have looking for money to open again, okay? For sure, I will open again, okay? I don't want just like that. Because we opened a long time already, okay? We pay a lot of tax in San Francisco. We do a lot of things for Tesco, for Sixo. We have a lot of problems right there now, okay? So can we help support us, some money for everybody over there? Please.
Thank you for your comments. Thank you for your comments, sir. Thank you, sir, for your comments. Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Thank you. That's okay. You got it. Thank you very much. I know you who I am.
Good afternoon, Supervisors. My name is Victoria Westbrook, and I'm the Director of Programs and Operations for Code Tenderloin. We do workforce development and coding classes in the Tenderloin and in Western Addition and for residents on Treasure Island. I'm here today to let you know that we have requested, there is request for funding for coding in the mayor's budget, in the budget for District 5 and District 6, and I'm asking for your support when those budgets come up for vote. I'm asking you more to help us increase access and opportunity for the marginalized people in the city so that they can gain access into the economic viability through technical positions. I have given you this folder. Please support us in the future budget votes.
Thank you for your comments. And before the next speaker steps up to the microphone, are there any other members of the public who would like to address the Board of Supervisors on general public comment? Please proceed, sir.
Hello. Excuse me. My name is Joseph Keenan. I am a member of the Code Tenderloin and have benefited from the value of learning to code. 5 years I dropped out of society, and about 5 months ago I met Code Tenderloin on the streets of San Francisco. I was homeless, and I still am. I'm living at one of the shelters. Through the engagement of learning how to code, it's transformed my life. It engaged me into learning that that there's a community out there interested in helping me and providing me avenues and paths of hope. Yesterday, I interviewed for my first job in a long time. It's a very high-paying job, and I wanted to share my story of engagement and the power of learning to do something like coding. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Next speaker, please.
Thank you. Tom Gilberti. Recently, I mentioned Supervisor Rowan and Duffy cleaning 16th Street BART station, Muni station. Mentioned Supervisor Yee with his importance in the 17th Avenue, 19th Avenue, Muni stop. This board needs to get re-involved with Muni. The people need it. The people need as much contact with making decisions in the city as possible. Further back, I mentioned the piranhas devouring their prey, referring to Uber, and Lyft devouring the taxis. Mentioned the taxi industry being at the Alamo, and well, the taxi industry is basically in desperate straits. A $26 million lawsuit. This administration has given no help. How many of you can afford to throw away $250,000 in 6 years and go bankrupt doing it? That commission needs help, input from you guys. Marijuana, the city that knows how. 99% of the people that have been working and taking care of marijuana for decades when it was illegal are now locked outside. They can't comply. That's not the way we want to go here. Last time I spoke, I mentioned a political contribution donation room that receives all contributions and donations to political candidates. And in this way, they come in, they receive, they get registered, and they're cleared. Names with dollars. Simple. Glass-Steagall was simple also. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Next speaker, please.
Thank you, Madam Clerk, President Breed, ladies and gentlemen of the board. Today, Supervisor Peskin introduced legislation about Facebook, accused of weaponizing sensitive personal information and using it to manipulate the emotions of its users. Well, that all sounds like extremely good rhetoric. However, what do you think citywide case management does? Those people that you pay over $1 million this week, what do you think they do except weaponize sensitive personal information and use it to manipulate the emotions of their clients? It really sounds extremely hollow. A lot of things in here sound extremely hollow. Last meeting, President Breed spoke about aligning the expenditures of this city with the values of this city. Well, that also sounds like good rhetoric, but since when are the values of San Francisco inclusive of trauma, terror, and torture? And why are you funding it through citywide case management community focus? This is the essence of assertive community treatment. It is to coerce people in any way possible. These people have been given a free hand to ignore your laws, to ignore the laws of this state and this nation, to ignore the Constitution of this state and, by implication, this nation. You pay a lot of attention to perspicuous, I'm sorry, I'm running too short on time. Madam Clerk.
Thank you for your comments. Madam President.
Thank you. Are there any other members of the public who'd like to provide public comment at this time? Seeing none, public comment is now closed. Madam Clerk, let's go to the next item.
Given that it's 3:18, Madam President?
Oh, well, let's go to our 3 p.m. special order.
Okay, thank you. Items 41 through 44 are the special order at 3 p.m. items for a hearing of persons interested in the determination of exemption from environmental review under the California Environmental Quality Act issued as a categorical exemption by the Planning Department on February 12, 2015 for the proposed project at 590 Leland Avenue to demolish an existing church building and construct 5 new single-family homes across 5 individual lots, 3 new 3-story single-family residences with roof decks at their respective 3rd stories, and 2 new 3-story single-family residences. Item 42 is the motion to affirm the Planning Department's determination that this project is exempt from further environmental review. Item 43 is the motion to conditionally reverse the department's determination subject to the adoption of written findings. And item 44 is the motion to direct the preparation of findings reversing the department's determination.
Supervisor Cohen.
Thank you very much. And colleagues, I know everyone is looking forward to hearing this item, but I'm going to have to ask for your consideration. I'm requesting another 1-week continuance. We are close between the community and the developer, but we are still in discussion. I'm actively trying to mediate a solution, but so we're not quite ready to move forward today. So I'd like to ask for a continuance of 1 week. Thank you for your
Supervisor Cohen has made a motion to continue this to the meeting of April 17, 2018, seconded by Supervisor Peskin. Colleagues, before we vote on the continuance, is there any members of the public who'd like to provide public comments specifically on the continuance? Please come forward at this time. No? Okay. Seeing none, public comment is now closed. Colleagues, on the item, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
On the motion to continue to April 17th, items 41 through 44, Supervisor Cohen.
Aye.
Cohen, aye. Supervisor Fewer. Fewer, aye. Supervisor Kim. Kim, aye. Supervisor Peskin. Peskin, aye. Supervisor Ronan. Ronan, aye. Supervisor Safai. Safai, aye. Supervisor Sheehy. Sheehy, aye. Supervisor Stephanie. Stephanie, aye. Supervisor Tang.
Aye.
Tang, aye. Supervisor Yee.
Aye.
Yee, aye. Supervisor Breed.
Aye.
Breed, aye. There are 11 ayes.
This item will be continued to the meeting of April 17, 2018. Okay, let's go to the next item.
Item 48 has been called from committee. It's an ordinance to appropriate $2.5 million of prior year's fund balance in general fund to Public Works for funding street and sidewalk cleaning pilot enhancement projects in fiscal years 2017 through 18.
Supervisor Kim.
Thank you, President Bree. Colleagues, I know this is the most exciting item today. So exciting, we had to call it from committee. And I do want to thank my co-sponsors, Supervisor Fewer, Ronan, and Peskin, for co-sponsoring this supplemental appropriation to enhance our street and sidewalk cleaning here in our city. I, like many of you, hear from our constituents every day about the conditions of our sidewalks. And we know based on the data that we've seen at 311 that it truly has gotten worse. The issue of street cleaning requires a lot more of our resources and our attention. And we have seen a significant increase by 73.5% in calls for services for street cleaning between fiscal year 15 and fiscal year 17. In fiscal year 2015, the city had 56,886 additional calls for street cleaning services. That amount nearly doubled in 2 years to 98,676 service orders citywide. We currently, here in the city, have about 285 full-time street sweepers who can cover 5 to 8 blocks per day, but we know that we need to do more. Just to put this in perspective, the city of Hong Kong, which by the way has 7.3 million people, have 9,700 street sweepers that work every day to clean the streets from sunrise to sunset. Now, we won't achieve that number, but even if we are able to add more resources onto our streets, it will certainly help. And I know Director Nuru, who I almost text on a daily basis about litter dumping or feces that I find on my way while walking around our neighborhoods, knows that we need more services. Now, I also understand the discussion that we need to address the actual causes of what is increasing the litter and dumping that we're seeing on our streets. But while addressing many of our crises, including our homelessness and opioid crisis on our street, needs to happen, we know that in the short term, we can at least provide relief to our residents and workers and tourists by providing additional services as we attack and address the long-term issues of our street conditions. Back in September, our office began the supplemental appropriation work, requesting the city attorney and the controller to work with our office on ensuring that if there are any surplus dollars, meaning any unspent dollars in the first 6 months of this fiscal year, that we would dedicate it towards increasing our city's manual street cleaning budget, and that the distribution of those services will be determined based on the data of street cleaning needs. And I want to make it very clear that we are not going to prescribe how these services are met. So I'm not asking that they be dedicated just to District 6 or just to the downtown area. They will be deployed citywide based on the needs as determined by our Public Works Department. I do see one of our lead directors of Public Works, Mr. Stringer, who is here to answer any question by members of the board. And colleagues, I ask for your support today. I know that this is something that's always a tough conversation to have outside of the normal budgetary process. But I do want to remind my colleagues that every single year we have had a supplemental appropriation come before this Board of Supervisors, and most of them have passed unanimously. In my first year on the Board of Supervisors, we passed a supplemental appropriation to expand our small business revolving loan fund. We've also had supplemental appropriations to fill in for federal cuts on HIV treatment and funding. We also, 2 years ago, passed a supplemental appropriation that I had introduced to expand our citywide pit stop program, which is our monitored public restrooms that really have decreased the amount of human feces and urine in the neighborhoods where they have been deployed. So I think that this is something that the board has regularly engaged in. I started this again in September because I feel that if there are ever any unspent dollars in our city budget, that they should be dedicated to public works and to additional street cleanings. We really are seeing a crisis on our streets. And as I said, in the long term, we must address issues of homelessness and, of course, substance abuse that may be leading to some of the additional litter and behavior that we're seeing on our streets. But in the meantime, our residents are begging for relief. It's just not okay to have to step over human feces or dumping of litter on the ground when we know that with additional resources and with additional manual street sweepers that we can address this problem today. The reason why we are also asking the board to support this today instead of in July is that the sooner we appropriate these dollars, the sooner we can spend down those dollars with our community-based organizations that provide additional street sweeping in our neighborhoods, or to hire more street sweepers immediately with our budget. We know that this often takes 2 to 3 months for the city to do, and frankly, our residents just cannot wait. Colleagues, I ask for your support, and I thank you for engaging in this very important dialogue.
Thank you, Supervisor Kim. Supervisor Tang.
Thank you very much. On that note about hiring, so from the information provided, it looks like this supplemental will help fund about 40 temporary positions. Is that correct?
Yes. So we are asking that a portion of this pay, approximately 41,150 hours of temporary labor for street cleaning services, which equals approximately 19.8 or 20 full-time equivalent positions over the course of the year, and will increase our street environmental services program by approximately 8%.
Okay. And so I don't know if these are the corridor ambassadors that we have currently. Is that with the kind of the model that we're looking at in terms of these positions?
Well, it's actually a blend. So it's a mixture of the ambassador programs and also the workforce development programs that we partner with many of our community-based organizations and actual positions here at the city. And I welcome Mr. Stringer to answer any specific questions on how Public Works would spend down the supplemental appropriation.
And I guess while Mr. Stringer comes up, the reason why I ask is because, every year during the ad-backs process or even the regular budget process, I have asked for additional corridor ambassadors for hotspots even in District 4, whether it's additional seam cleaning or corridor ambassadors along corridors that weren't covered. That's something that I have done during the regular budget process, but a lot of times what I get in terms of the answer, again, even though the funding is approved, is that we have trouble hiring these corridor ambassadors to clean our neighborhoods. And so I just wanted to know if we're trying to approve 40 temp positions, which is equivalent of 20 FTEs, how do we anticipate doing that at this time frame?
So it's going to be a mix of both our workforce development programs with nonprofits and as well as city hires. The nonprofits will be able to be on board a lot faster than city hires will, but it'll be a blend of both.
Okay. And I'm just wondering if we could do that for the regular corridor ambassador program as is, because again, I was told quite a few times that, we have trouble hiring or retaining some of these corridor ambassadors.
So we hire them through HSA originally. We've started to do our own hiring as well because it does take a while, and we can get somebody from HSA. Some of them don't work out, so they don't last that long. So we are looking to do permanent hires with DPW as well, and then transition them through one of our apprenticeship programs.
Okay, that sounds great. So, I know that there have been a lot of supplementals that come through the Board of Supervisors. I'm definitely one of those who tends to vote no on them because I do feel that a lot of them also happen to come very close to the budget season. So while I absolutely agree that our streets are filthy and that we need to do more in terms of cleaning, and I know the numbers have gone up. From what I read in the budget analyst report, street cleaning funding has also gone up by 47% since fiscal year 13-14. So although street cleanliness has, number of complaints have gone up, we have also funded more to our Public Works Department for that. And so I think that at this juncture where we're very close to the budget proceedings happening, I don't see why we can't wait for literally a month or two to be able to implement some of the changes that Mr. Stringer mentioned. I'm really glad to hear that in terms of the hiring and where you're going to hire from. For the corridor ambassadors. But I think, again, trying to say that we'll have 40 additional positions within this next, I don't know, week or so, I think is a little bit unrealistic. But again, I am there with you in terms of thinking that, yes, we could always do more to keep our streets clean, needles off our street, feces off our street, all of that. I just don't think that it's necessary in the form of a supplemental at this time, April, when we're about to go into budget deliberations. So again, it's something that I've asked for personally for District 4 every year. I think if we all had issues, we should ask for them during that regular budget time as well. So I will not be supporting supplemental today, but not because I don't believe in street cleanliness. I just don't believe that we need to do this in the form of supplemental right now. But I do want to thank SF Public Works because your office is always wonderful to work with. And every time we have issues, we always contact your team, and they're very responsive. So I do want to thank you for that.
Thank you, Supervisor Tang. Supervisor Cohen.
Thank you. First, I want to wish a happy belated birthday to Larry Stringer.
Thank you, Supervisor.
Happy birthday.
Thank you.
This is a great guy that's doing amazing work for San Francisco, doing the work that many people don't want to do. Supervisor Kim talked a little bit about the appropriation that we took back in fiscal year 2011 and 2012, when we appropriated money to the small business revolving loan fund. And I just want to highlight that that was during a massive economic recession. And supplementals are created to be a vehicle for us to address emergency problems immediately. And I also want to highlight that we did pass this supplemental. It was also a revolving loan fund, which means that over time it was actually being paid back. So it's not a one-time expense on the city, and that the city was actually getting its money back. And so, colleagues, I also want to bring to your attention that that I'm not going to be supporting the budget supplemental today. And I also want to share with you that the supplemental appropriations, I think, are going to continue to contribute to a problem that we're having, that we see manifesting on the streets today. And that's kind of like a haphazard, piecemeal approach to how we are dealing with our budgeting process. So as the budget chair, I'm really going to stand here and try to really defend the budget process that I want to encourage everyone to stick with. We have a process that we need to ride all the way through. And I think it's a very thoughtful process that allows us to make decisions allows us to make policy decisions. Supplementals reward quick wins, and without really addressing the issues of systematic underinvestment, which is what we're actually seeing. So this is, I think, another approach, another piecemeal approach that I would ask that you not consider supporting today, that we are in the middle of the budget process. We are working hard to make the process more transparent, to make it more focused, to hold the mayor's office more accountable to our board's directions and our priorities. I just wanted to highlight for you that this week, this Thursday, the Budget Committee will be dedicated, will dedicate its entire board meeting to our city's street cleaning budget process and identifying what resources are available, and most importantly, where are the gaps in services, and where we need to put more attention. We'll hear from the Department of Public Works about their strategy for tackling the citywide issue and their priorities for additional resources, paying particular attention to a point that Supervisor Fewer has called out as a Budget Committee member, an equity, making sure that every street that is filthy actually has the resources needed, and that making sure that the monies available are equitably distributed. We'll hear from public health about street behavior. We will hear from public health about needle disposal, and most importantly, how we should be thinking about our streets from a health perspective. We also need to approach the citywide issue in a citywide manner and have a policy level conversation around whether our approach to street cleaning is working. It sounds like there are some parts that may not be working. So through this process, we are going to be tweaking the allocation of dollars to ensure that it is working. The supplemental, unfortunately, circumvents the citywide system, and it circumvents the citywide prioritization of putting one neighborhood, prioritizing one neighborhood over another, and I really want to minimize that from happening. Today, you might have heard, Mayor has indicated that he has intent on working with us on a citywide solution. Our hearing on Thursday will give clear instructions on how, excuse me, we as a board would like to see that done. And so the mayor indicated today in the Chronicle that he will be voting against such a supplemental. But regardless of how this vote turns out today, I want to thank Supervisor Kim for sounding the alarm, for being a valiant champion in committee about a month ago about sounding the alarm on how we should be spending this supplemental money. And I hope that this board and the mayor would recognize that the supplemental doesn't actually finish the job. It kind of starts the job, and it scratches the surface. And streets across the city need more attention, and we need geographic equity when it comes to our street cleaning. So all of our constituents deserve our advocacy, and we owe it to them to give them a holistic strategy. So I hope that you will join me in not supporting the budget supplemental today. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Cohen. Supervisor Yee.
Thank you. First of all, I'd like to say that bringing up this issue, whether it's a supplemental or any other way we can, is spot on. It's really something that we need to discuss. I mean, it seems like in talking to some briefing with our controller and legislative analysts, when it was asked of the supervisors, what's your priority? Clean streets was up on the top of the list, it seems. And so in many ways, it's the question of, are we going through a process that we need to go through for the budget process to maybe get to this with a little more specifics? Probably. The question I have is, why didn't we do this last year? It's almost the same issue. And the discussion should have been last year, in which we would have had more resources for this year to address this. And I don't have the data, the analytical data. I think there are some in terms of how many phone calls and so forth in front of me, but I do walk out of City Hall probably 4 out of 5 days a week to have lunch, and just going to the restaurants around here, I noticed that there's been an increase of streets, blocks, in which it's really difficult to walk through when I have to hold my nose, and that's all part of having a clean street. Meaning, do we have enough restrooms for people to use? So, I'm not against supplementals, but I also want to know how we're going to spend this money and whether it makes any sense to have this amount or not. So I want to, through the president, ask Supervisor Kim or staff, if you're asking for, is it 2.5? Is the intention for that 2.5 to roll into being utilized next year as a full year, or are we thinking we're going to actually spend 2.5 in 2 months?
Supervisor Kim?
Thank you for that question, Supervisor Yee. I did first introduce the supplemental appropriation in January, and so now it is early April. And so I do think it is a valid question to ask whether that we can fully spend $2.5 million over the next 3 months, or can we slightly reduce that amount and ensure that we cover the increase in next year's fiscal year budget. My guess is that Public Works can probably spend unlimited sums of money to clean our streets, but I will reserve that question for the department.
Supervisor Kim Bruce Robertson, Finance Manager, Public Works. Supervisor Yee, no, we could not spend $2.5 million between now and the end of the fiscal year. What we certainly could do would be, as part of the supplemental appropriation, there is equipment. So we could certainly encumber and begin the process to procure that equipment, as well as we could also make sure that we get our nonprofit partner on board that would provide services in the Tenderloin, and then we could begin the hiring process. And as Deputy Director Stringer mentioned, we have gotten a bit more nimble in terms of hiring the 9916 position, so we could get them on board, but it would not expedite the full $1.6 million for staff. So short answer, no.
And actually, I appreciate Supervisor Yee's question because, again, we had submitted this a couple months ago. If you could just stay at the mic.
I'm sorry, Supervisor Kim. 1 second. Supervisor Yee, were you done with your comments?
I'm so sorry.
No.
Okay.
I'm so sorry, Supervisor Yee.
No, it's okay.
My
it's probably
apologies.
the same. I guess in my mind, regardless of when we appropriate this money, whether it's now or whether it's 3 months from now, that the department still has to go through the same process. So I'm in the thinking that there's almost no disagreement that we need to do better on this issue. Why I feel like we could start now with a smaller appropriation just to get things started and get the hiring done or the contracts done. So we don't have to wait 3 months from now, because I truly believe, and I'm pretty tolerant of what I see in the streets, that it is getting worse, and it's not everywhere, but certainly in certain areas it's getting worse, and it needs some help. And I'm willing to support a smaller supplement where we could get things started, because I looked at more recently, I don't know where it was a controller or somebody showed me a list of projects and programs that would support such an effort that would cost almost the same amount as what Supervisor Kim is suggesting. And so again, it seems like the department has thought this through already in terms of what would be a good approach. So I just like to say I want to support a jump start on this.
Thank you, Supervisor Yee. Supervisor Ronan.
Sure, I'd love to continue hearing the questioning between the department and Supervisor Kim, but I just want to say, having personally cleaned the BART station, which was in great need of cleaning every single day in my district, I can say that every day that areas of our district are kept clean makes a big difference in the lives of our businesses and our residents. And because the materials out there are so hazardous, whether it be human waste or used needles, it also becomes a public health crisis. And for really hard-hit neighborhoods like the Tenderloin, like the Mission, you could not get started sooner enough, and it could not be more of a priority for our district residents. I just want to appreciate DPW for your incredible work. I too work with you pretty much every day, and I really think that this use of unassigned funds in our current budget makes total sense. Now, if we were tapping into reserve funds or some other source of funding, I would have reservations and think we should plan it according to the normal budget process. But given the condition of our streets and how hazardous the materials are, I would say that this is appropriate. I do want to appreciate Chair Cohen for the approach you're taking to the budget this year. I'm really excited about it. I think it's the type of leadership that we've needed and that is going to make us have a different experience this year than we've had in prior years. So I appreciate your comments, Supervisor Cohen, and I'm really looking forward to participating in the process that you've set up. But I'm very supportive of this supplemental, whether it's the full $2.5 million amount or a lesser amount that it sounds like we might discuss in a minute. I do think it is not only appropriate, but something that our residents are demanding of us, and rightfully so.
Thank you. Supervisor Stephanie.
Thank you. Just want to associate myself with the comments of Supervisor Cohen and Supervisor Tang on this. I absolutely agree that our city streets are dirty and need attention. It's something that we hear all the time. There is absolutely no question whatsoever that we have to do something about it. There's no question. And what's more, we have to look at what is making our streets so incredibly dirty. It remains a high priority for me, and it's one that I have communicated to Mayor Farrell, his budget office, and to the chair of the Budget and Finance Committee. I've also been given assurances by the mayor that he has prioritized this issue and is working on a comprehensive plan for the entire city. The thing about these funds, this $2.5 million, to me, I don't see it as extra money. I see it as money that should be applied to our budget deficit we are looking at over the next 2 years, which is $136.9 million. And after that, after we figure out how to deal with that budget deficit, a significant structural deficit remains. There is an increase of $420 million in the deficit between fiscal years 1920 and 2021. Due to the expiration of one-time sources. So I think that we really need to have a comprehensive approach to this problem. We are currently in the budget process, as Chair Cohen mentioned, and we are hearing from our departments while we await the mayor's budget. The competing budget interests and the needs of the city are extremely intense. For example, one of the major contributors to our dirty streets is open drug use. Yet when we hear from our chief of police at the Budget and Finance Committee, we learned we only have 10 narcotics officers on our streets. We don't meet the number of police officers needed, which is currently mandated in our charter. There are a number of competing interests, and like I said, we're looking at a 2-year budget deficit of $136.9 million, of which the 2.5 can be applied against. And I'd like to say another thing. As a former department head, I know how hard it is to fight for funding to keep the departments going with the required number of employees it takes to provide the services we are obligated to provide to the city and county of San Francisco, the investments we need to make in the programs to make them continue. For the City ID program, I had to apply for grant money to keep that going as your county clerk. And for the clerk's entire operating system, we were looking for funding elsewhere. So departments are under stress right now as they're working with the mayor's budget office to get their budget going. They have budget instructions to cut by 2.5% and hire no FTEs. So I don't see this $2.5 million as extra money, actually. We also have a volatile federal government with no indications of support, and what really is threatening to me is the threat of SB 1 being overturned at the ballot, which we could lose major transportation dollars that are desperately needed. So for me, there's no question in my mind that we need to clean up our streets. No question. The fact is, though, we are in a budget process. This is $2.5 million that can be applied against a budget deficit, and we need to look at this globally. We need to look at it all together, and I want to respect the budget process that we're in. I look forward to continuing the discussion and review through our city's regular budget process. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Stephanie. Supervisor Tang.
Thank you. Sorry, just one follow-up question to my earlier one regarding hiring. So given that $1.6 million of the 2.5 is regarding hiring, the 40 temp positions, I'm just wondering how many vacant quarter ambassadors or people who are manually cleaning our streets, how many vacancies there are right now, and can we try to address filling those first?
So approximately, if we take the corridors, the commercial corridors where they traditionally work, there's about 90 now, and our goal is 130, so we're 40 down as of right now. And we continue to hire, but given our employees are a challenge, so it's hard to keep them. We haven't been able to get up above 110 in the last year and a half, and sustain it.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Okay, so I mean, I think that just goes to my earlier point about we'd love to get more people hired, we'd love to sustain them. I don't know that putting $1.6 million right now is going to result in that. I think it's a wonderful idea that you proposed in terms of, getting folks from workforce development to come and fill those positions quicker. So I'd love to see those 40 positions, filled first, rather than putting those the additional supplemental forward if we're not even able to.
We do have better success with the nonprofits than we do with hiring city. I will say that.
Okay. Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Supervisor Tang. Supervisor Kim.
Thank you. And I just wanted to bring up Public Works again to address the question that Supervisor Norman Yee brought up about what would be an appropriate amount that we could fund in the remaining fiscal year. And just looking at, what we had put together with your department, there was $560,000 to purchase the Ravo street sweepers, $100,000 for street cleaning materials and supplies, which I assume we could use today. We have the $200,000 in community grants, which we could also issue fairly quickly. But I think the question mark is the $1.6 million that we have set aside for hiring additional street cleaners. And so I'd like to right-size the appropriation given the time of the passage and reduce the supplemental appropriation amount as suggested by Supervisor Yee.
Supervisor Kim, real back of the envelope. So I would say the $560,000 for the equipment should remain whole because we can begin the process of procuring that equipment. The $100,000 for materials and supplies, we also could probably reduce to about half. The $230,000 to the nonprofit community partner, that is something that I don't think we would want to reduce, and the reason being, we agree there's only a few months left in this fiscal year, but I don't think we would want to start a program and not have the funding in place for it to continue for a full year. So I think that would be our concern, would be to bring a nonprofit partner on board, amend their contract with an extended work, an extension of work on Saturday and Sunday, and then only have it go for 2 months. So I think in terms of the operational impact, and certainly Larry can speak to that, I think that full amount would be warranted. So the big number that's remaining is out of the $1.6 million, just a real back of the envelope, I think $250,000, just kind of based on timing and some of the successes we've had in hiring. It would be about $150,000, but I handle all the hiring for the department, and so I have a good indication of what's in the pipeline, and we certainly could just expand some of our requisitions and I think use about $200,000 to $250,000.
Okay, I'm recalculating that amount.
I've got it in my
So,
Supervisor Kim, while you recalculate the amount, would you mind if I call on Supervisor Safai, who hasn't had a chance to talk?
sure.
Thank you. Supervisor Safai.
Thank you. So I guess I'm a little confused in where we are right now in terms of what was presented, because I guess the original request was for 40 part-time employees. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And how long would they have been employed by the department?
Well,
how long would the part-time for what duration of time?
The part-time employees each individual would be capped at 1,040 hours. And so based on the scheduling, they could work anywhere from 6 months to longer, but their hours are capped at 1,040.
Yeah. So, this is actually one program I do have particular experience with, having worked with DPW, helping Director Nuru to set the 9916 program up. And the way that we did this over a decade ago was we did work with nonprofits. We did work some with HSA, but not as much then. And it was more targeted toward some violence intervention strategies and first-time employment opportunities. And one of the problems I have with at least this proposal is that, for me, it's not, if you just think about it in terms of the streets and the condition of the streets, I think we're all 100% on board. I see that your budget has gone up significantly over the last 6 years, as it should, for street cleaning. But when you think about the actual employees themselves, we made a commitment, I think, with the 9916 back a decade ago to have at least a year, if not longer, and it was actually a pre-apprenticeship program. And the idea was that they would graduate into potentially permanent positions. And so the idea of hiring people on a very short amount of time is giving them false hope, in the sense that you do give them some temporary employment, but then at the end of the day, there's nothing at the end of the tunnel. And so that's what concerns me about this not being a comprehensive proposal and strategy. So I will be voting against this today.
Yeah, our hope is that at that 6 month point, there would be funding to sustain them through that following 6 month period and then transition on into apprenticeship. I am not a big fan of temporary help in the sense that if we provide opportunities for employment, we want to provide a career pathway out of that. And so you're in total agreement, and that's been Public Works' mission for the last 12 years, is not just to set up temporary programs, but to provide career pathways from starting on cleaning the streets.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Supervisor Safai. Supervisor Kim.
And just to reiterate the point, we worked very closely with Public Works to ensure that these will transition into permanent jobs, Supervisor Safai, so not temporary jobs. So what we're voting on today are not temporary positions. They will be permanent positions, and we've been talking with Mayor Farrell about ensuring that extension. And so I just wanted to rejigger the number, and so it looks like the number would be reduced to 1.1 million, Supervisor Yee. And so if that's an acceptable amendment to you, based on what we had heard today, that would be my suggestion for amending this appropriation to 1.1 million, which would bring us down to ensure that we can do the community grants, the street cleaning materials and supplies, as well as the 2 RAVO sweepers, and then what was suggested in terms of the money that could be spent down on hiring these new street cleaning sweepers. A couple of notes that I just want to make, because I do understand concerns from colleagues about moving outside of the budget process and the timeliness of it. I just want to reiterate that, again, we do this almost every single year. And to my surprise, it is very difficult to find all of our supplemental appropriations. They're not easy to search for through Legistar, but just off of memory, this is what we were able to find, at least since my time serving on the Board of Supervisors. In January 2012, we passed a $1.8 million supplemental appropriation to fund HIV treatment and care services, making up for where the federal government had cut from our programming. That was a unanimous vote. In late March of 2012, we passed a $1 million supplemental appropriation for a small business revolving loan fund. Again, at the same time as this vote, in late March, March 20th was the first vote, and that was 11-0. In 2013, we did not pass a supplemental appropriation, but I introduced a $2.5 million supplemental appropriation to help students that were not on track to graduate in our new graduation requirement to our public schools. That was a 7-4 vote. In April of 2014, at the same exact time as the time that we are in today, this board passed a $1.3 million supplemental appropriation to expand the homeless outreach team. Again, I think very similar to the item that is before us today. This was a 9-2 vote, and I want to respect Supervisor Katie Tang's consistent vote against supplemental appropriations, but it was only Supervisor Tang that voted against, it was a 9-1 vote. Supervisor Marr was absent that day, where we voted literally 2 months before the budget was supposed to be submitted, an immense expansion to our homeless outreach team in response to the fact that we believed that we should be addressing homelessness, and this was introduced by then Supervisor Mark Farrell. In September 2014, this board introduced and passed a $2 million appropriation for additional funding for counsel for unaccompanied youth that were here in this country without documentation. And then in January of 2017, last year, we passed a $2 million supplemental appropriation for right to counsels for those in deportation proceedings here in San Francisco. And by the way, we should just note that deportations is not a new crisis. The Obama presidential administration deported more individuals than this administration has so far in just an annual count. So I think we can question and debate the timeliness of supplemental appropriation, the emergency nature of supplemental appropriations, but the fact is that this board has done this every year, and it has done it as late as the week that we are in today, which is the first week of, or the second week of April. So it would not be inconsistent for this board to vote for the supplemental appropriation, given what we are hearing from our constituents every single day. They are tired of how our streets are. They are tired of stepping over human feces. They understand that there's a budget process, but they don't want to wait an additional 2 months for these services. They don't want to hear us say, oh, the fiscal year ends on June 30th, so we got to wait until that time to appropriate additional funds. They want to see that funding today, as quickly as we can provide it. And these are unspent dollars that every year this board decides to determine how to spend down every given year, depending on what we think is the most important issue issue of that time. I think that street cleaning has, the conditions of our streets have really reached a crisis point. We see it according to the data. We hear it on our phones. We see it on our walks. We hear it from our merchants. There's no issue I hear more about than the sorry state of our streets today. And I think that any money that we provide to Public Works will certainly help alleviate some of the needs that we are seeing here today. So, colleague, I'm happy to amend the supplemental appropriation as suggested by Supervisor Yee, down from $2.5 million to $1.1 million. And colleagues, I ask you to seriously consider your support of this ordinance. It will really provide a tremendous amount of relief and is not inconsistent with the practice of this Board of Supervisors.
Supervisor Kim, that was how many?
1.1 million.
1.1, thank you. Supervisor Kim has made a motion. Is there a second? Seconded by Supervisor Yee. Colleagues, can we pass the amendment without objection? Without objection, the amendment passes. Supervisor Safai.
I just wanted to call Director Stringer back up again because I heard something different from Supervisor Kim and what you had just said. So these are temporary positions, and has money been identified to make these positions permanent?
I'm not aware of as of yet that's the case, but
so we would be voting on these temporary positions without the understanding that there is permanent money for these positions as of today.
As of today, that'd be correct.
Okay, thank you.
But Mr. Stringer, you were
Supervisor Kim,
sorry.
Supervisor Cohen is on the roster.
Oh, my apologies.
Thank you. Supervisor Cohen.
Thank you. Which is, I think, to put a finer point on what Supervisor Safai is saying, it's all the more reason why we need to go through the budget process and look at this in a more fuller context. I'd like to also bring in the budget legislative analyst to this discussion, who has given an opinion that we heard in the budget committee. I want to welcome Harvey Rose or Severin. I'm not sure who's going to be speaking on behalf, but wanted to see there's clarification in the original language that Supervisor Kim wrote in the supplemental. It said that it would be full-time work, 40 full-time employees. Today we're hearing now that they're going to be temporary work. I don't know if you have an opinion or any clarity that you could give us on what your report highlighted on
President
for FTEs in particular.
President Breed.
Yes.
Mr. Rose.
President Breed and members of the board, Supervisor Cohen, our report identifies that there would be approximately 41,150 hours of public service aides, and we do identify that these would be temporary positions. There would be an equivalent of approximately 19.8 full-time equivalent positions. They would work, is our understanding, over the course of approximately 1 year to expend that 41,150 hours for a total cost of $1.6 million. Our report also identifies the community grants, the materials and supplies, and the equipment for a total of $2.5 million. Since this is a supplemental appropriation, we are consistent in advising the board that we consider it to be a policy matter for the board. I'd be happy to respond to any questions.
Thank you. I appreciate you taking a moment to answer the question. So I think that at this point, the budget process is the most appropriate venue to continue to have this discussion, particularly if we're talking about wanting to see long-term effects. Long-term effects, in my mind, are equated to long-term strategic thinking and also full-time employment. So I believe that it is laudable that we went down from 2.5 million to 1.1 million, but I believe that the correct and most appropriate place for us to continue this discussion is in the budget process. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Cohen. Supervisor Kim.
I, again, want to reiterate to this board that in a 9-1 vote, literally at the same exact time, 4 years ago, in 2014, we allocated $1.3 million to the homeless outreach team. Homelessness is always a crisis. We could have waited 2 months to expand the homeless outreach team, but we didn't. This board voted 9-1 to pass that supplemental appropriation. And we did not know if that money would become permanent 3 months later, and yet we did it because we thought that it was such a crisis on our streets that we need to expand the number of workers and mental health outreach workers that were addressing homelessness. So again, this very board many members who were there in that year voted for that in April of 2014, expanded our homeless outreach program without any guarantee that we would keep those jobs permanent. Now, Mr. Stringer, I just have to ask, realistically, what is the likelihood that these positions will remain permanent?
You mean transition into permanent?
Transition into permanent jobs, into apprenticed.
Realistically, without a funding increase, probably 50% may transition. That might be the best case scenario. I think I would have to consult with my budget manager to determine what we could support or transition from 9916s into permanent or nonprofit into apprenticeship.
And how often do we hire temporary workers to fulfill this need at the city?
Could you repeat?
How often do we provide temporary labor for additional street cleaning services?
We interview every 2 weeks at HSA and provide anywhere from 10 to 15 positions.
Temporary positions.
Temporary positions.
So this is actually the normal starting hiring process, is that you hire folks temporarily, and after a period of time, if they kind of meet certain standards, you move them into your apprenticeship program for permanent full-time work?
Given adequate funding, yes.
Yes, okay, great. I just think that that's important for members of the board to understand that this is in some ways the practice of public works, is to begin hiring workers on a temporary basis and then moving them into permanent full-time positions as funding is allocated. And what I heard from almost every member of this Board of Supervisors is that they're committed to increasing street cleaning funds, which I think would assure that those that met those standards will get permanent jobs. And that's not a question for Mr. Stringer, but I think for this board is that we are committed to ensuring that we are permanently funding these positions through the regular board process. Thank you so much, Mr. Stringer. So, colleagues, I've made the amendment that I made. I really plea with you to reconsider if you are not supportive today of this allocation. As I mentioned, our voters really don't understand when our fiscal year begins and starts. They just want to see action now. And it's really clear that with Public Works' ability to hire every 2 weeks, which is pretty extraordinary for a city department, that these funds will get put into place immediately and help give us additional resources, not in August or September, but in April or May, that's going to provide immediate relief for our tourists, our workers, and our residents. And our residents don't understand the difference between fiscal year July and May. They just want to see these services now. So, colleagues, I hope that you'll support the supplemental appropriation. Again, it is very consistent with the practice of this Board of Supervisors. And, colleagues, I ask for your support.
Thank you, Supervisor Kim. Supervisor Ronan.
Thank you. I just also wanted to reiterate, I know that, that this is a citywide issue without a doubt, and that all of our districts are in need of additional cleaning. But I would say that some districts are harder hit than others. And what I see on the streets of my district when I walk around, especially the Mission District, but also the Portola, is hazardous waste. And I just don't think it's appropriate to ask our residents to deal with that for a single other day, let alone 2 to 3 months. And that if we have the ability, and we know that this is a top priority for all of us in the city, then why not get started now when people are having to deal with human waste and use needles and other really hazardous material on our streets? And for those districts that are harder hit, or those neighborhoods that are harder hit than others, I also plead with you to let us get started now. Let us make a difference for San Franciscans and the street right now, and then we can continue it going forward for the rest of the city. Thank you.
Thank you. I had a question for Department of Public Works, specifically as it relates to nonprofit organizations and identifying community partners. There are a number of community partners that are already in existence with the Department of Public Works. Can you explain why the existing programs can't be used, where their budgets can be increased for the purposes outlined in the report?
Sure, Supervisor, President Breed, Bruce Robertson again from Public Works. What we did is we have a pool of nonprofit partners that we work with in various disciplines, ranging from landscape and agriculture maintenance to street cleaning. And we have about 5 firms in our cleaning program. And what we thought we would do, and what the supplemental appropriation, how we had thought we would implement it, would be to expand an existing nonprofit partner that we went through a competitive process to bring on board. And right now they're working for 5 days. We would expand that to 7 days. And that seemed like the most efficient way to do that in terms of our implementation.
So all of the nonprofit partners are only working for 5 days?
For this program that was identified in the supplemental appropriation. Just this one program that was identified in the supplemental appropriation.
But not in general?
But not in general, no.
Okay. And what about the positions? How would they be equally distributed throughout the city? I know Supervisor Kim mentioned something as it relates to those particular hotspots where we know there are significant challenges. What does the data say as it relates to the need in different parts of the city? Because the information I have mostly focuses on the Tenderloin, which we all know is in serious need of additional support and has been for many, many years. And the question I have is, there are also other areas throughout San Francisco, and how are we going to equally distribute the support necessary based on this supplemental to address those particular issues in other parts of the city?
Data and equity. We use the data to determine areas of the city, both commercial corridors and the like, in order to determine the distribution of resources so that it was equitable across the entire city.
But you have that data now, correct?
Yeah.
So
Yes.
Can you give us an idea of what are some of the locations you believe could potentially stand to benefit from these allocated dollars?
Yeah, I can give you just a sample, but I think we have a complete presentation on Thursday. Geneva Mission comes to mind.
Why we need to wait.
When I think about areas, Fillmore comes to mind. There's several commercial corridors. We have 130 of them, so when I think about it, I think of areas where we don't currently have corridor workers that we would look to place them.
So corridor workers as it relates to the DPW program, and also working with nonprofit agencies to identify individuals to expand their particular programs.
Yes.
Okay, so, in terms of additional hours, do you have any idea of how many additional hours per week we're specifically talking about, and how much of an impact do you believe this could actually have on some of the challenges that we're dealing with on our streets? Will it be noticeable? Would there be a noticeable difference?
It would depend on the given area, I would have to say that. Some areas we could deploy extra resources and you would see a significant change. There might be other areas where we would deploy the resources and you would see a modest change just because of the street behavior.
And Mr. Stringer, you're out there on a regular basis, I know that for sure, but can you give us specific examples? So, for example, you're responsible for allocating the resources for specific areas. And so what would be your plan, and where would you allocate those resources to, and where do you think they would make the most difference?
There would be resource allocation definitely to increase 7 days a week in the Tenderloin, which is one of our biggest challenges in the city. There would be some south of Market, there would be some Mission, there would be some in the Bayview, there would be some in Western Addition, and there would be some additional out probably in the Richmond.
And then in terms of those specific areas, what are the ones that you believe won't necessarily make a big difference because of the challenges that you mentioned?
Well, the Tenderloin is one of the most challenging areas that we have in the city, and parts of the Mission as well. And it can be bared out just by going and seeing us do the cleaning and coming back. If we don't have somebody constantly there, you continually have a challenge. And there are places where it will look like, even though we've been there an hour ago, it will look like we haven't been there. So.
Okay, and more specifically, was there a recommendation to provide additional pit stops in certain location as a result of an increase in feces in areas throughout the city?
I don't know if that was in the proposal or not, but there
It
is.
wasn't in this particular proposal, but I was wondering if that was a recommendation based on addressing issues around street cleaning, because I do know that there are power washing that's a part of this particular ask, but not necessarily an increase in pit stops. So I was just wondering if that was something that might have been a recommendation to help address this particular issue as well.
There was both a recommendation for additional and also extended hours for the existing.
So extended hours can be included for the pit stops for this particular, for these dollars allocated?
Not as it's currently situated.
Okay.
now.
So Supervisor Kim, is there a reason why you didn't include the either extension of hours for the pit stops or an increase in the number of pit stops for this particular ask?
That wasn't part of the ask that is before the committee today. We're happy to add that in if you'd like. I did do a supplemental appropriation in 2015 to expand the citywide pit stop program that this board actually considered. And so if you would like, we can add extended hours for specific pit stops. A number of the pit stops in the district that I represent are now 7 days a week. And so I know that that's not the same for every pit stop, and I think it's a little bit dependent on the behavior and also the data that Public Works has culled together. But if there's a specific pit stop that you want to extend to 7 days, we could certainly consider that.
Well, I think mostly, I don't necessarily have the data in front of me to understand where the need is. I do know that there is a serious need for public restrooms and restrooms specifically with attendance. It's actually worked well in the Haight-Ashbury community, but it's also been very challenging to identify locations because oftentimes, as you probably know, people don't necessarily want these pit stops in front of their homes or their businesses. So identifying a specific location has been very challenging, but we don't have the data before us today for me to make an informed decision as to an increase in the number of hours or an increase in the number of pit stops. But I was just wondering, just basically why that wasn't a part of the discussion.
So right now we're currently negotiating our contract with JC&Co,
Yes.
Which provides public restrooms throughout the city. And Public Works has been renegotiating this contract and actually adding monitors to new JC&Co bathrooms throughout the city. And so we were going through that process there. And so that is why it was not part of the supplemental appropriation. And when the JC&Co contract comes before this board, we're going to see additional pit stops and additional monitors that will be committed to with that contract.
Okay, thank you for your explanation. Supervisor Kim.
I just wanted to say that we do already have the data on what the hot spots were. And, sorry, Mr. Stringer, that we put you on the spot to ask you to list all of them. But they do exist. There's a document that actually was released back in December that highlights the hot spots throughout the city and county of San Francisco. And there's almost not a district that doesn't have a hot spot corridor, whether it's Mission in Geneva or Fillmore or the Tenderloin in South of Market or corridors in the Richmond. We do know that the hardest hit districts are District 6, 9, and 10, as Supervisor Ronan knows so well. But we did not want to prescribe how that money got spent down because I did not want it to appear that the supplemental favored one district or another. We want to give that decision-making to Public Works, who's best in the best position to determine how those funds get spent down. And I'm sure if supervisors call Public Works on a regular basis, as I know that I do, and I believe many of my colleagues do, you will probably see additional attention to certain corridors with this additional funding.
Thank you. Seeing no names on the roster on the item, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
As amended, Madam President?
Yes.
Supervisor Cohen?
No.
Cohen, no. Supervisor Fewer? Fewer, aye. Supervisor Kim?
Aye.
Kim, aye. Supervisor Peskin? Peskin, aye. Supervisor Ronan? Ronan, aye. Supervisor Safai? Safai, no. Supervisor Sheehy? Sheehy, no. Supervisor Stephanie? Stephanie, no. Supervisor Tang?
Nope.
Tang, no. Supervisor Yee?
Aye.
Yee, aye. Supervisor Breed?
Aye.
Breed, aye. There are 6 ayes and 5 noes with Supervisors Cohen, Safai, Sheehy, Stephanie, and Tang in the dissent.
The ordinance passes on the first reading. Madam Clerk, please read the items for adoptions without reference to committee.
Items 49 through 58 are being considered for adoption without committee reference.
Seeing no names on the roster, Madam Clerk, on the items, please call the roll.
Sorry.
Oh, Supervisor Yee.
What's the numbers you're calling?
Adoption without reference to committee items.
49 through 58.
Okay, thank you. Item 53.
Okay. Supervisor Kim.
I need to sever 49.
Okay. Seeing no other names on the roster, on the remaining items, excluding items number 49 and 53, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Supervisor Cohen?
Aye.
Cohen, aye. Supervisor Fewer? Fewer, aye. Supervisor Kim?
Aye.
Kim, aye. Supervisor Peskin?
Aye.
Peskin, aye. Supervisor Ronan? Ronan, aye. Supervisor Safai? Safai, aye. Supervisor Sheehy? Sheehy, aye. Supervisor Stephanie? Stephanie, aye. Supervisor Tang?
Aye.
Tang, aye. Supervisor Yee?
Aye.
Yee, aye. Supervisor Breed?
Aye.
Breed, aye. There are 11 ayes.
The items are adopted unanimously. Madam Clerk, please call item number 49.
Item 49 is a resolution to extend by 120 days the prescribed time within which the Planning Commission may render its decision on an ordinance amending the planning code to allow the owner of premises leased to the city for public safety-related use to resume pre-existing legal non-conforming self-storage use.
Supervisor Kim.
Thank you, President Breed. I have to make a motion to table this item. We had to introduce substitute legislation on the actual reestablishment of non-conforming self-storage use, and I was told that we will then have to resubmit this approval of the 100-day extension, so we will do that.
Supervisor Kim has made a motion to table. Is there a second? Seconded by Supervisor Ronan. Colleagues, can we take that without objection? Without objection, the item has been tabled. Item number 53.
Item 53 is a resolution to support California Senate Bill number 3, the Veterans and Affordable Housing Bond Act of 2018, authored by Senator Jim Beal, authorize the issuance of bonds in the amount of $4 billion.
Supervisor Yee.
Thank you. Colleagues, this resolution in support of SB 3, Housing Bond Act of 2018, that will appear in this November's ballot and will authorize the issuance of bonds up to the amount of $4 billion to finance various existing housing programs, as well as infill infrastructure financing and affordable housing matching grant programs throughout the state. Recently, we as a city had to pool support for an affordable senior housing project in my district. I have, however, doubled down on my efforts to bring deeply affordable housing to my district and am currently working to bring another site forward. This state funding is an important part of the funding strategy to allow our city to equitably distribute affordable housing throughout the West Side. Thanks to Supervisors Peskin, Ronan, and Fewer for their co-sponsorship. I look forward to all your support.
Thank you, Supervisor Yee. Colleagues, can we take this item, same house, same call? Without objection, the resolution is adopted unanimously. Madam Clerk, are there any in memoriams?
There are none to report, Madam President.
Okay. Is there any further business before us today?
That concludes our business for today.
Great. Thank you, everyone. We are adjourned.